Hello and welcome back to the PhD Journey Unplugged. I am Dr. Marilyn Ward, and this is my colleague, Dr. Sarah Gordon. Eh,
Hi,
Today,
everybody.
today we are going to discuss the power of learning. All right, and I'm going to let Dr. Gordon share her analogy with this real quick.
Oh, sure. So while we were preparing for today, we always talk a little bit behind the scenes before we get on these podcasts. And I was saying, Marilyn, when I think about the gift of learning or the power of learning, I just started thinking about learning to ride a bike.
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
And I actually Googled like adults learning to ride a bike because the assumption
Oh,
is that we learned to ride a bike as a kid. And we're scared, it was scary, and we conquer the fear. And then it's
right.
exhilarating to be on a bike, to go fast. It's exhilarating. And I was like, well, can you do that as an adult? And everything I read says there's no reason you can't learn to ride a bike as an adult. So I think it's a great metaphor and analogy for
Absolutely.
life. Like you can learn at any stage of your life, whether you're a kid
Yes.
or an adult, and you can always learn to ride a bike.
And you never should stop learning.
Right.
But the fun thing about the that statement about learning to ride a bike is we always say once you learn you never forget, and
Yes.
we'll say it's just like riding a bike, right?
It's
And we
true.
use that phrase.
Oh, we're freezing early today in our podcast. She'll be back. But anyhow, I wanted to start off and say that back to riding a bike. Actually, I had some fears. Oh, she's
There you
back.
go.
I just
You
let
were
me just you froze too.
okay.
But
I was
let me
like,
I
wait a second.
just listen, being successful is being adaptable. This is not our perfect morning. I got the
Yeah,
landscaping people
no.
outside, and I'm babysitting the dogs this morning, and you're away
And
on
I'm in a hotel.
vacation. So
I am in Maine in a
we're
hotel.
we're gonna do the best we can this morning, and
Yeah,
hopefully what we have to say is more important than all the distractions and obstacles around us. But I just wanted to say back to riding a bike. I actually had a lot of fear learning to ride a bike in the last couple years, learning to clip into the pedals. And the
yes.
first time I did, because I was training for triathlon, I bought a slightly used new bike, learning to clip in, and I fell a couple times, and I was really
Same.
scared.
Yes.
And then, I went to ask for help. We always talk about asking other people for help. And they put on these pedals with like the loosest settings. I can slip
Oh,
my foot out, and
right.
I started to get some confidence with it. And I love riding a bike. It's exhilarating. So, and I just
And
wanted to
so
share that when you froze.
yeah, so while we're talking about that, how about on the tri bike? Do you get down? Do you have the tri bars?
Well, that was another learning curve. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
the whole so I started running when I was very young. I always loved running. It's not that complicated. Had the original Timex Ironman watch. It was, we've come so far with even this type of technology and how it syncs to your app and you study your data. It was very simple. And I just ran, got, running shoes and went. Uh, learned to swim in my early 50s, really. Started swimming just very recently. Again, it's not that complicated. It's a suit, some
Right.
goggles, and a cap. The bike, there's a lot of learning curve there. And the whole
Takes the
sprint
most quit.
triathlon, a lot of
Yeah.
commitment, and it's still a little overwhelming for me, but as far as the aero bars, yeah, that took some learning for
You do,
sure.
I have still that is a fear. It is a because I don't feel like I have control and I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I have not, but I still want to learn. I'm still open to learning to do it. I just I am afraid of like I've seen people not make that transition from down to up and up to down, and they've almost, have fallen. And I have fallen with the clip-ins in the beginning. So again, it's that fear that's keeping me from that. It's that learning curve, but we're gonna get
Yeah,
there.
and it's so interesting because we just kind of jumped in, starting to talk about riding a bike and racing and triathlon, but I also listened this week to something called The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. Did you ever
Yes.
listen to that? It's called
I
Finding Joe, The Hero's
he
Journey.
has a book.
Okay.
I believe
So
he has a book, and I've had read bits and pieces of it from a friend who was sharing it with me.
I highly recommend it to our listeners because the concept of fear holds us back from so many things, trying new things,
Mhm.
learning. And when we push through some fear, and we weren't necessarily going to just talk about fear, but I'm glad it came up
Yeah.
because even the fear of going back to get our PhDs, I
Yeah.
mean, when we got the acceptance letter, I don't know about you,
Oh
but
my gosh. I
fear
was
set in.
yeah.
It was excitement and then fear. Like,
Here
oh
immediately
my
after.
gosh, what did I just sign up for 5 years?
Yes. Yeah.
So I
Because
think
it's
that's really a big thing to teach from our experiences. Like, and you said it on a last podcast. If your dreams and your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough.
not big enough.
Yeah.
So this was definitely one, and I think some of the things that we learned along the way, fear set in again, like just looking at our notes and stuff. And I'm like, learning the different, the tools that we had to have, like the SPSS was huge for me.
Yeah.
And then I had to learn G power analysis only because one professor had mentioned it. And I remember being in our group study, and a lot of our cohorts were like, what is G power analysis? And I felt like I had an upper advantage because I had one professor who mentioned it. But then I think I set fear into everybody else who hadn't had it or hadn't used it. And what G power analysis is, for those of you that are listening, it lets you know how many participants you should have in your study.
Yes.
It runs like a formula. SPSS is what we use. It's statistical power analysis, or well, I can't remember the exact what the acronym is for, but that's how we run our statistics. And I found it interesting that when because we're learning, we're PhD students who are learning the curriculum, correct?
Hmm.
At the same time, preparing for our dissertation. So I remember learning it, and when we're learning it, it was already set up for us, right? We ran our practice studies, everything was done. Well, when it came time to run our studies, they're like, okay, here you go. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't even know how to set up that data.
Yeah, they
I,
gave us the data sets and the
yeah,
classes.
which was
I
already
mean,
done.
I would even back it up like, yes, there were so many learning curves for SPSS and Qualtrics. I had to design my survey in Qualtrics, and then
See,
I
and I
had to,
didn't have, yeah, I didn't use that, but that
right,
was pretty cool.
and then I had to analyze my data and qualitative data in MaxQDA, which is a software program to do theme building for qualitative data analysis. But I mean, I would back it up like to even. Do you remember advanced quantitative statistics?
Yes.
Just opening up that book and just
Well,
looking at like,
I took advanced qualitative. But
okay, well,
yeah,
didn't we have to take both?
I think you got to choose one or the other.
Oh,
I
okay.
believe because it
Well,
was an advanced class, you got to choose
oh,
one or
you're
the other.
right. And that's, you know what? I'm so glad you remember that because you're right. Because I remember that moment. I said to myself, I am terrified of advanced quantitative statistics. And I remember talking to Maria, a friend of ours in school. We deliberated, like, what should we do? I said, you know what? I'm putting myself in the fire pit. It's
Yeah,
exactly where I need to be. And it was terrifying. And actually I had a note about that to talk about a little bit later, but I remember what I did, and maybe it's a strategy for anybody who's listening is I asked the teacher of that course, I said, I'm not asking you to help me every week or what's coming ahead. Can we go back to the week before and let me talk about what I didn't understand? Because we took
perfect.
8 weeks of accelerated courses. It was so much information, so fast.
So much in such a short time.
And he worked with me, and so I kept notes of like what I did not understand at all, but kind of blew through it to get to the next week. And we went back, and that really helped as a strategy. I think that
Oh,
sometimes just keeping a note of
absolutely.
something that you really stumbled on, because you know you got to move forward to the next week
Right.
and give yourself some time to go back.
Absolutely. And I think with that, it's opening up that vulnerability, being like, hey, I don't get it. I
Yes.
need help. I remember buying when I was actually running my statistics, not even for the course, I understood it. I aced statistics like, with an A. So I was like, I got it. But when it came time when I was running my own data is when I got nervous. And I remember buying like the SPSS for dummies. I remember reaching out to a friend, like, hey, I reached out to you. I'm like, am I doing this correctly?
I do
And
remember that. I think it was in the
yeah,
summer. I think it was last summer.
oh yes. And I was freaking out. I remember waking up, and I think I shared this before, waking up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my gosh, I think I did it wrong. And I went out. Of course I didn't. I did it right. But I was second guessing myself. But that's where that learning though helped
Mhm.
you, it makes you feel more confident. And I think like if we were to just talk about this, like the power of learning, what it can do for you in professional life and academic life, personal life, it offers you obviously the skills and the knowledge that we need. It offers cognitive benefits,
Mhm.
right? We with my
Yes.
seniors, we had what was called lifelong learning. So it just there's so many different things that it does, and it helps build that confidence wherever in life. It just you get that confidence because afterwards, right, when we finish, we're like, now we're helping other people,
Yes. I mean,
you know?
as you talk about as we age, so if you think about cognitive activities, learning, and you think about physical activity, I mean, it's like exercising your body, exercising your mind. So sedentary body, sedentary mind, sick body. So,
Right.
you know, pushing yourself, if something is uncomfortable, it means you're actively learning. Like if we were
Right.
to go back and to decide to study some foreign language, it would be hard. It would be, we would fumble, we would probably get frustrated with it. We would probably need to take a lot of breaks with it. But we're actively learning and we're using our cognitive skills, we're like engaging them. Like if you would go to the gym
Right.
and lift weights, well, maybe, you get to an end of a set and your muscles start to burn and it gets kind of heavy to finish that last rep. So it's the same thing when you exercise your mind and your brain. So I think that we
Yeah.
both know there's some research that there's probably a lot of research. I have to spend a little bit more time in it, but that shows all the benefits of
Oh,
learning on
oh
aging
yeah.
and you know, cognitive skills.
And
Um,
a lot of my research was on that. So like
okay, so
part
you
of
probably
the
know more.
study was with cognition. When I worked at the senior home, I started a program and I would put on the board, it was neurobics. So you have aerobics for the body, right? But then the neurobics was for the brain. And it was so I would have different classes on like we did a lifelong learning. So different people would come in and they would teach or I would teach. But then I always provided brain games,
Hmm.
like printed out, like, because some people didn't have access to a phone where they could play like Wordscape or 10, the different mind games. So I would print them out in like the coloring, like mandalas.
Right.
If
Oh,
I'm
I love
saying that
doing
right.
those.
Yeah. So that again, it's working the brain. So we dubbed it neurobics. It wasn't me. I actually looked it up and somebody else came up with that term, but I stole it for them. But it was letting them know that I mean, physical activity already helps the brain. And
Right.
especially if you're doing a certain class, like crossover exercises, like opposite hand to opposite leg, that crossover movement helps the brain. So there's certain exercises that help. You're bringing oxygen to the brain. But when it comes to the cognition and the learning, it's also working, that
Mhm.
prefrontal cortex. It's working, making that working your memory skills. So I definitely think um, you should do both. Like it all should be incorporated for that overall health.
Yeah, and we're not really focusing on nutrition. We're not giving advice on nutrition. I'm sorry about the noise in the background.
Don't even hear it.
Okay. But it's the same thing of feeding your body healthy, good foods, feeding your brain healthy, good foods. So it's all interconnected. We know from studying physiology, human anatomy, and focusing on science in our degree, our systems are all interconnected.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of us go through life thinking about what's really going on internally in our body and the activities that we're doing, we benefit from them. Like you said, oxygen, the oxygen we get from exercising, how good it is for our brains, how good it is for our bodies, our cardiovascular systems. It's just, I think if we can think about life a little bit more three-dimensionally and dynamically, then we can consider, okay, if I put this junk in my body,
Right.
how is that going to impact, like, think about it. If you
I
eat
always
a
say
lot of
garbage in,
sugar, how do
garbage
you
out.
feel after you eat a lot of sugar?
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, it's not, so I don't know, it takes us off topic a little bit, but I think it's important as we talk about the power of learning to set yourself up for like success in learning, to take care of your body, to eat healthy, to exercise, to be in a good frame of mind to learn, to set yourself up for success, basically. Uh,
And when you say like
what
with
do you
the
think about
body,
that?
we are such, God created such an awesome scientific mechanism. Like we,
It's
I think back like
fascinating.
how
I
he
know.
created us and how all these things that we do, like why all of a sudden don't we need an appendix and why can I have my gallbladder removed and I'm still alive? So I definitely think, and then so, but right. So if we can just take a minute to appreciate all of what that body does. And that's why sometimes I get frustrated when we abuse our body so much. I used to say, tell people all the time, you've got one body. You need to
Right,
take care of it. You can
right.
replace your house. You can replace your car, but we spend a lot of money on that. We spend a lot of money keeping our house this way. We spend a lot of money making our car fancy. But then here we are driving through McDonald's eating the dollar burger. What?
I
We should be
know.
eating, not saying the most expensive food, but good quality food because this is it. This is
Right.
it.
Well, we talked about last week about being mindful
Yes.
and being intentional in our actions and learning well, the example you just gave about the quality of food we eat, you have to slow down a little bit and be
Right.
mindful about what you're doing. And learning too. And every
Right.
week, I always say every week, we try to build on the weeks before, but we've talked about finding balance and,
Right.
we've talked about some of these things in past episodes about giving yourself time to
Yeah.
learn, time to create, time to think,
Yeah.
and setting yourself up for success with strategies,
Right.
health, wellness, quiet
And it,
spaces to
yeah.
study, to learn, to think, to write, asking for help. I mean, there's lots of things. I wanted to just back up for 1 second if I can, because I made a note.
Sure.
I just think it's important as we talk about the power of learning. I always like to think of myself as a late bloomer and going back. I mean, you said something once, and we're both in the same boat. We both paused school for a
Yeah.
good number of years,
Yeah.
and then we jumped back in. Well, you were in your
And
mid-late
I didn't even
30s,
start until my
mid
late
40s.
30s, but I started at 32 with getting my associates.
But I mean, this
And
doctoral program, we
and that
both
yeah, I had
started,
almost 10 years from my master's to this. I took a very long break.
and me too. And my point in bringing this up is that we could have said to ourselves, we're too old to do this. You can't get a doctorate at 50, or
Yeah,
I'm 58. I started at 53. I'm 58 now. We can't get a doctorate. We're too
yeah,
old to learn. We're too
yeah,
old to handle the academic rigor of the program.
right.
There are so many things that we could have said to ourselves to be scared of the challenge, to walk away from the challenge.
And I probably did a few times. That might be why I pushed it off for so long. But
But we did
my,
it. And,
yeah,
and and my point is that the power of learning is now that we did it and we look back, oh my goodness, all the lessons, all the experiences, all the things that have propelled our lives forward. It's
right.
incredible. So I guess my point there to our listeners is don't be scared of doing hard things and learning. It will enlighten you in ways you don't even know.
Yes. And I tell my daughter she's in school now, and I'm just like, knowledge is something nobody can ever take it away from you.
Mm-mm.
You can, again, with material things, they can take that away. You can
Hmm.
take my car, you can take my house, but you can never take my knowledge. People say, but school is so expensive. What are you doing? I said, I don't look at it at that. I'm like, this is an investment in my life.
Hmm.
So if I'm going to invest money in everything else, I'm going to invest in myself first. And again, having that knowledge that's going to help me in so many aspects. Like it helped me with the degree, it helped me professionally, personally. It really helped me, and nobody can take it away. Nobody
No.
can walk up to me and be like, "I'm going to snatch your knowledge." Nope, I'll share my knowledge, but you can't take it away from me.
I don't know if you've ever listened to Steve Jobs.
Oh,
He gave a, I always come back to these commencement speeches because I think they're so interesting how these successful people kind of summarize their journey and their lives
right?
to help other people. Because it's always the goal, I think, in life is to use your experiences, to use, your life wisdoms to try to help other people. It's why we launched
Yes,
this podcast.
right.
But Steve Jobs says, and it was Stanford, he went to Stanford as well, like Katie Ledecky, I mentioned in a past episode. And he says, you can't connect the dots looking forward.
Ah,
You can only connect the dots looking back. So when you look, and that just gave me goosebumps because it's
yeah.
so true. Because we look back on our PhD journey, when we started it, we had no idea we'd be sitting here right now talking about trying to
No.
help other people who are struggling with things in their life and to say to
Yeah.
them, you're gonna get through it.
Yes.
You're gonna one step at a time, and when you get through it and you look back, it's gonna all make so much sense.
And
It's
what do they say? Keep your
incredible.
eye on the prize.
Yeah.
Eye on the prize. And this is funny how you say, like Steve Jobs mentioned about the don't look back,
Well,
but
no,
in
look
race,
back to
or
connect
I
the
mean, look
dots.
back, right, to connect the dots.
You can't look
But
forward and understanding where it's taking you.
so in racing, remember, you're racing and it's you, and you need to stay focused on you and keep looking forward because how many times have you seen, and we see it in the Olympics all the time, where somebody looks back and boom, somebody passes them because they're too busy paying attention to what's behind them and not so looking at the past.
Well, Marilyn froze again. So I highly recommend you listen to that Steve Jobs um, commencement speech because I think it's true because he couldn't have known that where he would have grown in his life.
Pause and see if there
Yeah,
you are. There
yeah.
you
I
are.
just I went back. I'm learning how to like adapt when this happens. Um, I was just saying that with that Steve Jobs commencement speech, I highly recommend it. It's not that long,
I'll
and I
have to
think
go find it.
his point was he could never have known where his life was going when he started out. He
Oh,
just took risks, and he worked and he learned and he worked through fears and he worked through people telling he worked through heartbreak too. He worked through
right,
people who say they're your friends and they end up
right.
not being your friends. But he
Yeah.
stayed focused on, like you were just saying, he kept his eye on the prize, he believed in himself, and he kept moving forward. That is the power of learning.
Yeah. Look at all the inventors back in the day. Wasn't it like Thomas Edison, like how many mistakes did he take to before he got it right?
Yes.
And people saying in gosh, is it Einstein? It was he wasn't he the one? Because I get my famous people confused. But wasn't he the one? He was super. He was brilliant, obviously. But the one school had sent him that rejection letter, but his mom never let him read it because they weren't gonna. They thought that he was, a little odd. But his mom didn't share that with him because she didn't want that to affect him. And then he went.
That's a beautiful, I'll have to look that up. I don't know
Yeah, I
exactly,
don't know if
but
I'm getting it right, so please
no,
excuse me
but
if
it's
it's
more
wrong.
important.
But
It's more important the message you're trying to say, and that
yeah,
is that we always talk about there are going to be naysayers. There are going to be people who don't think that you can do something, but in your heart, and Marilyn will come back. Um, in your heart, if you believe in something, you've got to believe in yourself. You got to go for it. Against obstacles, against setbacks. And you just got to follow your heart with it. There she is. I knew
yeah.
she'd come back.
Yep, I was like, okay, this is fun today. It's
I
probably because
miss
I'm in a hotel. I
I
am so
miss you
sorry.
when you go away, but I know I'm happy when you come back.
Oh, this will be an
My
entertaining
there's
one,
my
everybody.
co-founder.
Please enjoy.
We we're getting good
Oh,
at being adaptable.
yes.
Um, no, I love what you were saying there about the whoever the brilliant mind is, if it's Einstein or whoever it is. I bet you that type of experience is not that unusual for successful people who have parents or some or a mentor or somebody in their life that just who believes in them
Right.
and isn't going to let the negativity um, destroy you know, destroy their path. So it definitely, I mean, you definitely have to want it. You can't, other
Right.
people can't do it for you, but it does help
Right.
having people along the way to encourage you, good friends or whoever it is, family members or
Yeah.
so I love that story.
And I
Well,
think even now we're not done. Like I'm not done learning.
I
You're not done, right? You're
know
continuing on.
I am
So
continuing on.
just because we finished this chapter, I'm not closing the book. I'm not done. Like I know I'm gonna go on and do something more as you are. So even when I'll keep learning until the day I die. That's the type of person I am.
I
You're
think
never too old to learn.
you're never too old to learn. I think we're wired that way. I think it's empowering. I always struggle with some of these
Yeah.
words. I think last week it was rewire. This
Yeah.
was empower. It must be my R's. I think I
Yeah.
need to learn to pronunciate my R's better. I think it's empowering. Marilyn, help me today.
Empowering. Now I'm gonna mess up saying it. That's what makes
Espe-
this fun.
Especially as women, I think that I think of a couple generations ago, it was the exception, not, women getting their doctorates. And there were
Right.
women who were, you know, focused on education and learning and being all that they can be. But it's still we're still, I guess, a little bit of a minority in that way.
Right. We're breaking boundaries. And
We're
I
breaking
think that's
boundaries.
awesome. And I think it's great for those of you that have daughters and that you're trying to, help. I mean, obviously your sons too, but like letting them know, like it wasn't until I had taken a women's history class that I really appreciate the journey that women have
Mm.
have taken and now I'm like we're going to keep going like that just empowered me to keep like focused and I was like all right we're going to do this. They're like I want to be one of those powerful women people talk about later in life,
Absolutely.
so
And why, I
yeah.
always ask, like, I'm like, why not? Why not?
Right, right.
Why not? We talked about that in a past episode about following like thriving beyond surviving. We just talked about that last week. And by the way, did you see our friend
Which
on your
one?
walk? The nice man who, good
No, I
morning,
did not.
Marilyn.
I looked for him. I did not find him. I
We,
went out probably an hour or two late. I think he's one of an early between a 7 and an 8 kind of guy. And I didn't get out there till 9, so I felt bad. But don't worry, I'm still looking.
I know, and for our
I'll
listeners,
find
like,
him.
now you have to come back every week because it's gonna
Yeah,
happen one week. We're gonna be like,
I
we
will find him. I
him.
promise you.
People are like, what are you talking about? We're gonna say, go back to episode 6, Thriving Beyond
Yes,
Surviving.
we'll find him. I know I will. But it was nice that another stranger had said, went out of their way and said hi. So that was cool. But and then now every time a stranger does say hi or stops to talk, I'm always like, you're one of those people, which I love.
And maybe our listeners, maybe we're starting something. Go out and
Yes.
go talk to somebody
Yes.
new.
Be that special person.
Yes,
Be the one.
I love that. Well, I made some notes. We kind of, I didn't really stick to anything I wrote down today, but that's okay. It's one of those days.
Okay.
I wrote this and I read this somewhere and I love this. See what you think. Fumbling, then soaring. I think it must be the hotel she's in this week. Well, okay, I wrote a couple things down. She will be back. Fumbling, then soaring. And I love that because that's all about what the power of learning is
There you are.
fumbling. Hi there. I said fumbling, then soaring. What do you think?
Oh, yes.
Fumbling, then soaring.
Yes. And it's when you don't, what does it say? You only fail when you don't try to get back up.
Right. I agree. And in that, and we did get a brief comment from Marilyn today. In that, after fumbling, then soaring, it's gaining confidence. And so that is the power of learning, is that you gain confidence after you fumble and then you start to soar. And from that, gaining confidence, you start to feel a sense of accomplishment. You
Yeah.
agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, I wrote this quote down. I don't know exactly how it fits, but it just kind of resonated with me while I was reading for today. All right, let's see what you think. You ready? I
Okay.
always like
I'm
these like
ready.
quotes.
I love your quotes.
Look, we got doctorates of philosophy. I gotta be a little bit of a philosopher on this platform.
Absolutely.
Okay. Our ability to transcend the hardest things in our lives, the most difficult circumstances, help us grow into caring, understanding, and compassionate human beings.
Oh, yes. And I think
Good one.
being compassionate is huge right now in this crazy world I think we're kind of living in. So yeah, because we've gone through it, I think that does give us that um empathy. Anytime you've been through something, you have empathy for that. Like I think
So
my weight
true.
loss journey, I was heavy after my children, and but because I lost the weight and then I was able to coach other people, I had that empathy
Yeah,
for
you can
women going through
relate.
that same journey. And
You
I
can
think with
relate.
now, yeah, and with so that's a great one. I like that.
I do,
We'll
and
have to put that in the post.
okay, I will, because I think like sometimes we said in another episode too, in a past episode, the things that I've gone through in my life, the struggles in my life end up being the story of my life. You can use that to help other people who are going through similar things. And in future podcasts,
Yes.
maybe we'll share a little bit more about ourselves. You get to know us.
Yeah.
But for now, I just like to say that I think that what grows out of sometimes hard things in your life is compassion,
Right.
kindness, and empathy. And, you know, and learning. And back to the power of learning. It's the power of learning can be exhilarating, like, it can be, it feels amazing. But it's
Yes.
also, we also go through hard things too and struggles that we learn through. So, it's a balance. Everything I think in life is pretty much a
Yeah.
balance.
Because
You're
I
good at
know
that.
there was a few times I was like, I am not never going to get these statistics. SPSS this is a
Right.
just downloading the system was bad enough. So,
I
like,
remember that. It was so hard to figure that out.
and then mine expired. The one that we had through class expired by the time that I got
Yes.
to so I had to redo it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not happening. And I remember again that fear, and I was like, okay, we're gonna get through it. Take a deep breath, step by step. But now being able to go and mess around with my data from before and just play with it, it's like this is fun. Statistics, if you're a numbers person, like it is really fun.
That's You and I are like a mixed method study. You're the
Yeah.
quant, I'm the qual. Because I don't
Yeah.
think it's fun at all. I was like, I'm done, I'm out of here. Get me to my
Oh,
qualitative data.
yeah. Oh, I did like it was interesting
That's
to me. And that,
interesting.
yeah. So I think it's, but right, because with that learning, we gained this knowledge. So it did make us more confident. And then I feel great. And now I'm like, okay, I might not be a statistics tutor. I don't know if I could ever go that far, but I definitely have enough knowledge that I could help somebody else if they had some questions. And it gave me the knowledge because I remember trying to apply for a job at the health department years ago before I was still in school already, but I hadn't had statistics yet. And that was one of the requirements. And I said, no, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm taking that course next, term. But now I can go in and confidently say, yes, I know statistics, and I could go and apply for a job that
That's
required that.
awesome.
So that, was a
That's
tool.
those connecting the dots
Right.
when you're fumbling through it, and now you're
I'm like, yay.
confident in it, and you can help other people. I do think when we think back about the PhD journey, I do think when we set out to do our studies and run our studies and do our data collection, data analysis, they do let you kind of fumble through that a little bit because they do
Oh
want you
yeah.
to, like, I know you're saying in the course, like courses we took, we had the data set, so it was kind of given to us. And then you're kind of out there on, I used to call it the Wild West, like you're kind of out on your own. I mean, obviously you have your dissertation committee to guide you and whatnot, but you're supposed to
Right,
struggle. You're
right,
supposed to demonstrate that you can learn and that you
right.
can get
It was
through it. So
learn from it while doing it.
yeah, and so I made a note here about practicing gratitude, and you've mentioned it in past episodes. Like, I'm grateful for this hard day.
Yes,
Thank you. Like,
yes,
but in learning, if we can remember, have a mindset of practicing gratitude, being open to feedback, not defensive, the
yes.
learning will
That's a
become
big one.
exhilarating, for you. It will. It'll become
Yes.
hopefully a positive experience. Don't fight it.
Constructive, constructive criticism. We need sometimes when we were learning, just like with the scientific writing, I could have been when my professor was like, trying to teach me to be a better writer. I was like, she was giving me constructive criticism, but what do we do immediately? Because we're vulnerable and because we're, you know,
Get
we're
defensive.
we're like, what is she talking about? I'm a
Right.
great writer.
I'm right, you're wrong. Right.
Yes. And I
Well,
was like,
guess
but
what?
I embraced it and I was
Yes.
adaptable and I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. And I still talk about those two professors today. Like I'm just like they were tough on me, but I know that I became a better writer, a better critical thinker. And so we have to remember to embrace it, be thankful for those tough moments, those in life, because we do become better on the other side.
You're 100% right. And you demonstrated the reason you were successful. And I know you're modest, but the reason you were successful is because you adapted and you didn't get defensive and you were open to learning. Because I know in that beginning year in our program, people quit the program. I know
Yes.
firsthand, people complained. Actually, I mentioned this briefly in my commencement speech. People complained. And some of us, like yourself, we just embraced it. In one strategy, and again, I mentioned it earlier in our record, today, is I looked back. Like if you look back on your writing, people were telling us we weren't writing scientific, the level of scientific
Right.
writing that they want at that point. If you go back and you look at those early pieces that we wrote, they are like blog posts. They
Yes.
weren't scientific writing.
I could
They
totally
were
see a
right.
difference.
They were
Right.
right. We had to be open to the constructive feedback and
And they
navigate it, and we did. So
and they
that's the
came before
lesson.
us. So, right, we had to listen to them. They already had their PhDs. So,
Yeah. It,
they not that everybody knows everything and not that you can't ever challenge a moment where you think you are right and wrong, but you still have to accept what they're saying and work through it.
it
And I've
doesn't
been
feel good when people give you hard truths.
right.
I
It
mean, I
doesn't.
got one yesterday. It didn't feel good. So, but it's okay because it's
Yeah.
more about like, what do you do with it? And
What do we learn from it?
what do you
Right.
learn from it? And so that's the power of
Learning. Oh, power of
learning.
and it
Anyhow,
definitely, yeah. And I think, I'm sitting here as we're wrapping up, trying to find
yeah,
exactly the right thing to say for you to keep on, but it is the title. It is the power of learning.
power of
Just
learning.
to know that we're never too old to learn,
No.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Learning it's not an age thing. Learning is we need it. We
Mm-hmm.
need it for growth, but we need it for physical and mental health. And so don't ever stop.
No, I agree. And we originally we were going to name this one The Gift of Learning. I do still think there's a gift in it.
There it
It's a
is.
mind, and we talk about mindset. Last week we talked about mindset, but I love Marilyn came up with the power of learning, and I agree with it. It's powerful. It's empowering.
Oh,
Just real quick, I know we got to wrap up, but we always like to give some strategies, and then kind of like the big, maybe it is kind of what you just said, but leave with a kind of a last thought. I just wrote down a few. Creating an enjoyable learning environment.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Good one.
Or just creating a space where you enjoy learning or finding that space. And like Marilyn always says, break things down into smaller parts.
Yep.
If you feel overwhelmed, walk away, take a break.
Yes.
Ask for help when you need to. We always say that, ask for help. And I guess ask yourself what, in terms of trying to figure out what you want to learn. Maybe you're
Right.
not necessarily in a program right now and you're thinking about what you want to learn. Ask yourself
Yes.
what you're passionate about. What do you love to do? And and don't be afraid to develop new skills, even if it takes some hard work.
Right.
You will be transformed. We are.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna say, keep finding something new. Once you've accomplished one goal, and my friend had just sent me a message about like accomplishing goals, and they're like, and she's reading a book, and it talked about being a runner, and once she finished the race, she was done. Well, it's all about that. So because we do get focused on that goal, but then she's like, now what do you do? So it really wasn't about because I my immediate response to her was find another goal. And she was like, yeah, but there's more to it. It's about that path and about getting there. So, but because you don't ever want to stop, you do want to find, always set yourself on something new again. Like, okay, finish this. Now what? Now what?
Yeah.
We need to remain to be inquiring minds, right? We want to keep thinking like, what else is out there? What else can I do?
Yeah,
You
it's a healthy mind, healthy body,
Yeah,
um, li- thriving, and it's all, we kind of bring it always back to kind of successful aging. So I think that what you're sharing is a really healthy way to look at life. Just real quick, next week, I think we're talking about building meaningful connections, and it kind of came up with we're going to try to have, if we can coordinate it, have a guest next week who
yes.
just graduated as a classmate of ours, and he did some interesting research. And I think that you'll enjoy, our listeners hopefully will enjoy the story of how we came to meet and how important it is in building new connections with people. And so, yeah, we're excited to try that out. We'll see how it goes.
Yes. We'll see
He'll
how
be our
that
first
goes.
guest if we can pull it off. So,
Stay tuned for this, but be passionate or compassionate with us as we go.
that's right. Be kind to us.
Yes. We're
We're
still learning as we do
We
this.
are,
So
and
this,
we're coming to you with definitely with our open heart. So
yes.
we want to help. So anyhow, with that, enjoy your time away, and
Thank you.
we'll see
I'll
you.
be back next week.
Okay, we'll see everybody next week. Thank you. All
Bye, everyone. Thank you
right.
for joining.
Bye.